Okay, welcome to Klein's Geometry. This will be our final segment for Chapter 11, and we are going to look at circles on the coordinate plane. This is a biggie. You're going to see this in Algebra 2 and all your other classes after this, as far as you go in math classes. We're going to write equations for circles. We've written equations for lines, for parabolas, for step functions, for exponentials, all that. Now we're going to write equations for circles, and we're going to graph those circles on the coordinate plane. And then we're going to use it to solve problems. That's what we do, solve problems. So now, the equation of a circle is based on the distance formula. You know, distance, x squared, x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. And the fact that every point on the circle is equidistant from the center. So basically, any point on the circle, we can take x minus that center point of the radius, x minus the x coordinate of the radius, and y minus the y coordinate of the radius, which we're going to call k, and that gives us all the points on the circle, because that's all the points equidistant from the center. Now, that means the radius, this distance, equals x minus h squared plus y minus k squared if h and k are the center of the circle. We don't like to graph things. Well, we can't graph anything with an x and a y in it and a radical sign over it. So if you square both sides, we get the radius squared equals x minus h squared, h is the x coordinate of the center, plus y minus k quantity squared, with k the y coordinate of the center. And this is the formula we're going to be using. Okay, equation of a circle, write it down. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. Any circle with a radius at the origin, or a center at the origin, where these are both 0, you just have x squared plus y squared equals the radius squared. So those are handy circles, and you'll work with those quite a bit. But know that when you're subtracting h, when you're subtracting k, you're subtracting wherever the center is for that particular circle. So let's see how we're going to use that. We want to write an equation for circle J if we know the center and we know the radius. So whenever you're doing this, just like when you did equations in point slope form or whatever, step 1 is to write down the equation of a circle. Identify what you've got up here. I would think, okay, here's my center, so this is h and this is k. Here's my radius. And then you just plug them in to your formula. 3 goes in for h, 2 goes in for k, and 4 goes in for the radius. And then the last step would be to simplify what you can. So the signs are all good, but we could square the 4. There's your equation of a circle. X minus 3 quantity squared plus y minus 2 quantity squared equals 16. Done deal. That's all you have to do. Write it down, memorize it, plug in what you're given, simplify what you can. There's your steps. Okay? Let's look at another example where they didn't give us the radius. Hate it when they don't give you the radius. But they gave us a point on the circle. Write the equation up for circle K. It passes through this point, and this is the center. Well, if we know a point and we know the center, we can find the radius using the distance formula, because we've got 2 points. So we just write down our distance formula, and we plug in 6 minus 1 squared, 4 minus negative 8 squared. Been doing this formula for a while. Plug it all into your calculator, or think 5 squared plus 12 squared, and square root your answer, and end up with 13. Now we have a radius. Once you've got a radius, you just write down your formula, x minus h, and I always, anytime they say center, I always think h, k. I put that right down there so I know. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. Now, another way to remember this is if you're thinking this is an x and this is a y, well, x minus the x coordinate of the radius. So if you don't remember h and k, at least remember this is going to go with the x. This is going to go with the y, okay, in your formula. Then you're good. And now we're going to simplify. And now there's a couple things to do to simplify. When I see minus and negative, I think plus. And then when I've got the 13 squared, I actually square it. So notice that's what's going to happen here. We've got x minus y quantity squared, y plus 8 squared, and we end up with 169. And right here is your final equation. So if they don't give you a radius, don't panic. Just use the distance formula and find it. Now, if you're given the equation of a circle, how can we graph that circle? Making a table is a good plan. If you can find the center and the radius, I just plot a point up, down, right, and left and get there. So let's look at this. We want to graph x squared plus y squared equals 16. Right away, the first thing I would say, there's no h and there's no k. So I know its center must be 0, 0, 0, the origin. And I know the radius is not 16, it's the square root of 16. So it's going to be 4. So we know radius is 4. And the values that I would make on a table, I would think negative 4, if x is negative 4 and positive 4. So I'm going to show you on a graph. I would think from 0, I've got to go if the radius is 4, I'm going to go from my center, 4 to the right, 4 to the left, 4 up, 4 down. You can make that table of values by just putting in some numbers for x and finding the y, but this is kind of the easiest way. And then if I was going to think, what if I put in 2 or 3 for x, maybe? And if you put in negative 3, you get the same thing. And then if I that would give me 9. I'd take that away. So I'd have y squared equals 7. And then you square root it. And you've got about 2.6, be plus or minus. So you get an idea. But if you were going to graph it, I would do these 4 points, and then I just make a nice arc. And you can get a nice graph that way without looking. Your book's going to tell you, look at all these little interim points. But if you just know the radius is 4, and you go 4 to the right, 4 to the left, 4 up, 4 down, from your center, you'll get there every time. You can plot all those points too, but... Now, let's graph this one. So first thing, we need to know what's the center. And when I looked at this, I would think about your formula. So h is clearly 3, but this has to be minus, so you've got to change the plus to minus the negative. So now I'm going to see that here, my center is really 3, negative 4. And then this is my radius squared, so the radius is going to be the square root of 9, so it's going to be 3. So now, if I want to graph this circle, I make my center, or my coordinate plane, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll see if I'm going to get far enough. So my center is at 3, negative 4. There's the center. And my radius is 3. So from 3, negative 4, whoops, I've got to go 3 to the right, 3 up, 3 to the left, 1, 2, 3, and 3 down, 1, 2, 3. And then I make my little circle, which isn't quite as round without graph paper. So that's how you're going to graph your circles, okay? And we'll see a little prettier. That's a little prettier one. So, in summary, the equation of a circle, x minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. Remember, h and k, center, and whatever number you see over here, if you square root it, you get the radius. And you can graph a circle by finding the center and counting up, down, right, and left the length of the radius. Then just sketch your circle. So that's what you needed to know about the equation of a circle, and see you in class.